All right then, good morning everyone. Welcome to the meeting of Community and Protective Services of March 26, 2021. I'd like to call our meeting to order. This meeting is being held remotely through Zoom, which is necessary, unfortunately, in these times of physical distancing to keep everyone safe during what I hope is the late stages of this pandemic. Please note that those who do not need to participate in the meeting to save on bandwidth can also watch it on the live stream of the Ottawa City Council YouTube channel. A reminder to participants to please keep your microphones muted until I call on you to speak. I'll provide each committee member with the opportunity to ask questions or comment on the item in the order which they raise their hand on Zoom. Committee members will be called on first, followed by any other members of council who have joined the meeting. And I see we have quite a few, so welcome. For panelists, the raise hand option is found at the bottom of the participants list. For attendees, you will find the raise hand button at the bottom of your Zoom window. For those calling in, please press *9 to raise your hand. The committee coordinator and I will be watching for those cues. The usual 5-minute speaking limit will apply. Members are also reminded to submit any motions, visual supports, or declarations of interest in writing to the coordinator at their earliest convenience. Though the deadlines have passed for residents who register to speak to this committee, residents may also still make written submissions prior to council on April 14th. If you have any technical difficulties signing into the meeting, I suppose if you did, you probably wouldn't be here and hearing me say this, but you can contact the clerk's office at committees@ottawa.ca or by calling 613-580-2424 using the extension 28821. So good morning, everyone. Ottawa is built on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. The peoples of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and the land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. The City of Ottawa honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people, and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. So thank you for joining us today. We have one item on the agenda, very exciting, the Women and Gender Equity Strategy, which we have been looking forward to since the launch of its development in 2019 and the appointment of Councillor Teresa Kavanagh as the liaison. It is the city's first comprehensive strategy to integrate gender equity into all of our processes, services, strategies, and policies. So today we will hear a presentation from staff to tell us more about the strategy and their framework for the first phase of implementation in 2021 and 2022. Cette stratégie illustre l'important progrès du Conseil dans le cadre de son engagement à favoriser l'équité, l'inclusion pour toute la population d'Ottawa. The strategy represents significant progress in Council's ongoing commitment to advance equity and inclusion for everyone in Ottawa. I want to thank the Council's Liaison for Women and Gender Equity, Councillor Teresa Kavanagh, and all the members of Council and staff on the sponsors group who have worked to champion this initiative. I would also like to single out the incredible work of Suzanne, Sawson, Jepti, and their entire team for this hard work on this landmark initiative. So thank you, merci à votre attention. Passons maintenant à l'ordre du jour aujourd'hui. We'll start with a roll call. Councillor Meehan.
Here.
Councillor McKenney.
Here.
Councillor Fleury.
Bonjour.
Salut. Councillor Deans.
I'm here.
Hello. Councillor Kavanagh.
Yes. Here.
Councillor El-Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Vice Chair Eglai.
Here.
And I am also present, obviously.
Yeah, you're forgetting 2 people, Mr. Chair.
Oh, pardon me.
Kits and I are here, hanging out.
Did I not? I am sorry. Councillor Tierney.
Present.
And Councillor Kitts.
I'm here.
I seem to have an out-of-date list. My apologies. So I've received no regrets. Obviously, we have a full house. Good to go. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Confirmation of minutes. Are the minutes for the meeting February 18th, 2021 confirmed?
Confirmed.
Confirmed. Okay, moving on to our item today, the Gender and Race Equity, Indigenous Relations, Inclusion, and Social Development. Beginning, we will have comments from Suzanne O'Brien, followed by a PowerPoint presentation, and then delegations. The PowerPoint presentation will be provided by Suzanne O'Brien and Sassin Al-Rafai, and they will answer any questions following our delegation. So I will turn it over to Suzanne. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Chair Luloff, and the committee members. This morning, Gender and Race Equity, Inclusion, Indigenous Relations, and Social Development Services is pleased to present the City of Ottawa's first Women and Gender Equity Strategy. Staff available for questions today are Donna Gray, General Manager for Community Social Services Development, Jefté Alizé, Gender and Race Equity, Indigenous Relations, Diversity and Inclusion Branch Manager, Sassin Al-Rafai, Women and Gender Equity Specialist, Jason Sabourin for Children's Services, Paul Levine and Saeed Saya for Acting Housing Services, Rick O'Connor from the City Clerk's Office, Dan Chenier, General Manager from Recreation, Culture, Facility Services, and Valerie Turner, General Manager for Innovative Client Services, as well as myself. So in 2019, City of Ottawa Council approved the development of a Women and Gender Equity Strategy. Recognizing that women, girls, and gender diverse persons face barriers to actively participating in all sectors of society, the Women and Gender Equity Strategy was developed to ensure the City of Ottawa's services, strategies, and plans integrate a women and gender lens and promote women and gender equity. Gender equity is the process of being fair to women, men, and gender diverse persons. To achieve fairness, strategies and measures must be available to compensate for the historical social disadvantages that have prevented women, gender diverse persons, and men from living equally in society. Using a gender lens ensures we are constantly reflecting on how we allocate resources, design programs, and make decisions. Keeping at the forefront the different needs of women, men, and gender diverse persons, and addressing any imbalances so that all people benefit. The strategy works to remove systemic barriers faced by women and gender diverse people in Ottawa by implementing concrete, actionable items such as reviewing and changing policies, practices, or procedures, prioritizing women, girls, and gender diverse persons for social services and resources, and targeted hiring of women and gender diverse persons from equity deserving groups. The strategy includes a systemic framework that sets targets and defines commitments on women and gender equity for the first phase of its implementation in 2021-2022. The strategy commits to annual reporting on targets. We present a framework that will enhance safety and create welcoming and safe spaces for all gender groups within city facilities. That will ensure the city's workforce is reflective of our diverse population. That will better engage and respond to the often invisible needs and realities of women and gender diverse residents. This is a significant milestone for the city, which has demonstrated such a commitment to advance women and gender equity at both the organizational and service level, particularly during the COVID pandemic, which disproportionately impacted women, Indigenous women, racialized women, immigrant women, elder women, women living with disabilities, and gender diverse persons, of which, in response to the pandemic, city staff rallied and created a gender-based response and were able to organize several learning opportunities and awareness-raising events, develop a gender, race, and equity data baseline study, and direct funding allocations to support agencies targeted towards supporting women and gender diverse persons. This forward-looking strategy was created through an enormous collective effort led by the city's Women and Gender Equity Specialist, Sassin Al-Rafai, under the management of Jefté Alizé. We would like to acknowledge the tremendous support of the Mayor, the Women and Gender Equity Council Liaison, Councillor Kavanagh, and the Council Sponsors Group for championing the women and gender equity work in the city. We'd like to acknowledge and thank City for All Women, who co-chaired the Women and Gender Equity Working Group this past year and has been supporting the city's journey towards women and gender equity commitments over many years. We also thank the working group members for their dedication and contributions to the advising of the strategy. And we'd like to thank the city manager, the general manager of community and social services, general manager of innovative client services, and the entire senior leadership team for their support and contributions of the strategy and its phase 1 strategic framework. In acknowledgement of the council sponsors group, we'd like to acknowledge Deputy Chair Suds, Councillor McKenney, Councillor Deans. Sorry, I just lost my note here. Councillor McKenney, Councillor Dean, Deputy Chair Suds, and I think I've got them all. My apologies if I've missed one. We extend gratitude to the numerous city staff and departments, including Innovative Client Services, Recreation, Culture and Facilities, Children's Services, Housing Services, and the City Clerk's Office, all of whom committed to specific strategic actions within their departments. And the Ottawa residents who participated in the different discussions, forums, and platforms which contributed to shaping the priorities of this strategy. It is my pleasure to introduce Sawsan Al-Rafai, our Women and Gender Equity Specialist, who will share her presentation with committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, councillors, and thank you, Suzanne, for the comments and introduction. I'm just waiting for the slides to come up. Thank you. Next, please. The first women and gender equity strategy for the city that I present to you today recognizes that women, girls, and gender diverse persons face barriers to access adequate, affordable, and suitable services and resources. This strategy acknowledges that women and gender diverse persons from intersectional backgrounds face complex and multi-layered forms of discrimination and barriers. And by intersectional groups, we mean that women and gender diverse persons are all not the same. Women who have multiple overlapping social identities face more barriers and complex forms of discrimination. For example, racialized women face complex barriers to services. Women with disability who also happen to be trans women also face multi-layered forms of discrimination because of their gender identity, in addition to the other social identities that they have. We know that women and gender inequities have ripple effects on the well-being and development of our whole community. We believe that this strategy is going to benefit persons in our community from all gender groups. Women and gender equity will create a respectful and inclusive workplace that is equitable to all employees. And we recognize that COVID-19 pandemic has had a disproportionate impact on women and gender diverse persons. Next, please. So what is the reality for women and gender diverse persons here in Canada and in Ottawa? Women in Canada who work full-time still earn average only 87 cents to every dollar earned by men. And women tend to be overrepresented in informal, temporary, and part-time jobs. Women also continue to be underrepresented in leadership and executive positions. Indigenous women, women with disabilities, and trans women experience a much higher rate of gender-based violence in our communities. And there is, of course, course, the disproportionate and gendered impact of COVID-19 pandemic. We know that women and gender diverse persons, due to isolation measures, have been at a higher risk of gender-based violence and sexual violence. We know that intersectional groups of women, particularly racialized women, were at a higher risk of losing jobs, losing sources of income, as well as the risk of food insecurity. We know that women who carry additional burdens of care, such as single mothers, women who care for children, who care for elderly, who care for persons with disability, living with disability, or who are ill, also have been disproportionately impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we know that before all, women coming from racialized, indigenous, and immigrant backgrounds have higher rates of contracting the COVID-19. So this is the rationale behind the city's commitment to women and gender equity now more than any time before. Next, please. The Women and Gender Equity Strategy is a corporate strategic direction. It was approved in the governance report of 2018-2022. The city's commitment to advancing women and gender equity as outlined in the city corporate strategic plan 2019 and 2022. It is in alignment with the city's reconciliation action plan, anti-racism strategy, corporate diversity and inclusion plan, and it also collaborates and in alignment with the official plan and the community safety and well-being plan. It is also worth mentioning that this strategy was built on the equity and inclusion lens that was developed in partnership with City for All Women Initiatives CAWI. We're building on the intersectional approaches and the gender lenses as part of this strategy. Next, please. The progress achieved on women and gender equity strategy so far since the announcement of the strategy in March 2019, we have worked closely with corporate strategy and plan teams to apply a gender lens. And a gender lens would mean a process where we examine the implications of city plans, strategies and policies on women and gender groups, particularly those from equity deserving backgrounds. The work that has been done was through collaboration with corporate plans and strategies such as the official plan, the climate master plan, and the transportation master plan. We have conducted several learning opportunities and awareness raising events for city staff, mainly around what the gender lens means, the gender lens to data, as well as awareness raising around gender-based violence. We have launched a gender and race and equity data baseline study and developed a series of tools to apply a women and gender lens to COVID-19 response and recovery in collaboration with the Human Needs Task Force. We have started working on an Indigenous gender and equity implications section to the corporate report council reporting template. And one of the most recent achievements is the City of Ottawa signing on the Electricity Human Resource Canada Gender Accord. And the Gender Accord is an agreement that is signed by several cities and organizations in Canada that promote representation of women in our workforce and also fully support them to know about the equal opportunities and their ability to grow and develop their full potential in their careers. Next, please. For the development process of women and gender equity strategy, the Council Sponsors Group was established in early 2019. The Council Sponsors Group is formed of Mayor Jim Watson, Deputy Mayor Suds, Councillor Deans, Councillor McKenney, the City Manager, General Manager of Community Social Services, and General Manager of Innovative Client Services, and is chaired by the Council Liaison for Women and Gender Equity, Councillor Kavanaugh. The group has met 6 times since its establishment and continued in the past months to champion women and gender equity issues and to provide guidance to the development of the strategy. a working group formed of more than 15 community organizations, service providers, and partners and allies from the community was established in February 2020 and was co-chaired by the City for All Women Initiatives, COWI. The group continued to provide input into the development of the strategy, and also members of the working group were part of the engagement process for the strategy. We conducted the research and municipal scan on women and gender equity to document models and best practices from other cities. And finally, we developed and designed a broad public engagement strategy to hear from both our city staff and residents on what could be considered as priorities for this strategy. Next, please. A broad-based public engagement strategy was designed to ensure that we reach to groups, specifically equity-deserving communities. More than 570 persons were consulted throughout the process from the period of August 2019 until January 2020. We were very lucky that the engagement process took place right or finished right before COVID-19 hit. We conducted focus group discussions with more than 75 city staff, where we asked them as staff what they consider as gender needs and priorities for the city. We also conducted five community focus group discussions where the Indigenous community participated, older adults, immigrant communities, and youth from August to October 2019 in collaboration with the our community partners and allies. More than 150 persons from the community organization, service providers, and residents participated in these focus group discussions. And then this was followed by two public forums, one in September 2019, where we heard from more than 170 residents about what they consider as gender priorities. And we also heard from them what could be the first service areas we should work with in phase one. Another public forum was held in January 2020, and it was designed specifically to hear from the 2S LGBTQ+ community to assess the service gaps and needs from a gender perspective. We also launched an Engage Ottawa online platform that was filled by 150 residents in English and French. The strategy ensured that women and gender advocacy networks and community health resource centers and violence against women sector and other stakeholders contribute to the formulation of the long-term women and gender equity strategy outcomes, as well as the phase one strategic priorities. Post-COVID-19, city staff also were present in multiple community tables, including the Human Needs Task Force, and they remained updated on the new and emerging women and gender equity issues that are related to COVID-19. The working group continuously informed the city on key women and gender needs and gaps under the pandemic. Next, please. When consolidating all the findings from the different community and city staff focus group discussions, as well as the two forums and other means of engagement, 8 thematic priorities emerged: housing, safety, a gender inclusive city, representation, gender sensitive data, resident engagement, training and awareness raising, and resources. And we explored these further through discussion with the working group and with different departments in the city. Thank you. Next. Understanding that the Indigenous women in Canada are confronted with sustained colonial violence through a combination of systems that must be dismantled using a decolonized, self-determined, and Indigenous-led approach. For that reason, the Women and Gender Equity Strategy will promote initiatives that are led by and for the Indigenous community to address the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls report recommendations. We support initiatives led by and for the Indigenous community, while also also committing to furthering the city staff's understanding of an Indigenous gender-based analysis. Next, please. The Women and Gender Equity Strategy 21-25 is a long-term commitment of the city to women and gender equity. It is an interfacing strategy that will ensure that the City of Ottawa's services, strategies, and plans always integrate a women and gender lens and promotes women and gender equity within the organization itself. We aim to apply a gender lens across the organization, and a gender lens, we mean by that is a process of assessing the implications on women and other gender groups of any planned action, including legislation, policies, programs, resource allocation in all areas, but also at all levels. It is a systemic process that considers the different lived experiences, needs, and voices of the different intersectional groups of women and gender diverse persons. Next, please. The vision of this strategy is Ottawa is a women and gender inclusive, diverse, and safe city for residents from all gender groups, where every person has equitable access to services and equal opportunities to participate in all aspects of life. And the mission of this strategy is to work on removing the systemic barriers that hinder intersectional groups of women and gender diverse persons. It integrates a women and gender equity lens in the city strategies, plans, policies, and services by developing city staff capacity, meaningfully engaging women and gender diverse persons, and also ensuring safety and inclusivity in the workplace. Next, please. The strategic guiding principles include women and gender equity, women and gender equality, evidence-based planning, collaboration, intersectionality, and accountability. Next, please. So again, consolidating and analyzing all what we heard from the community and city staff, four main commitments, long-term commitments for the city emerged, and these we consider here as the four main outcomes, long-term outcomes for the women and gender strategy. The first outcome is policy change for women and gender equity, and this means that the city's decisions, programs, plans, and resource allocations are all informed by an intersectional gender lens to ensure that residents from all gender groups have equitable access to services and to resources. The second outcome is safety. The city establishes policies and accountability mechanisms to ensure that its offices and facilities continue to be free from all forms of gender-based violence. The third outcome is equitable representation of women. The city promotes and increases women and gender diverse representation in its workforce and introduces policies that support career success through equitable access to work opportunities, but also including leadership roles and other underrepresented occupations. The fourth outcome is gender inclusivity, and it means that the city offices and facilities are welcoming and safe environments for all gender groups. Next, please. The Women and Gender Equity Strategy framework followed a phased approach. And that's because women and gender equity issues are complex, they are multidisciplinary, and it will allow us to pilot some of the initiatives and to document results and lessons learned. And it will also allow us to make changes if needed in the interventions that we propose that cross-cut multiple service areas in the city and continue to develop them. Next, please. So the Women and Gender Equity Strategy is a long-term commitment for the city. And for the reasons I mentioned, we followed a phased approach. Phase one of the strategy will start in 2021 or the remaining of 2021 and ends in 2022. The second phase will start in 2023 and lasts until 2025. And the idea is to use the first phase to pilot and implement systemic changes at the corporate level, and then conduct a midterm review in the first quarter of 2023. The midterm review will allow us to document the successes, but also the challenges and the lessons learned from phase one. It will allow us to engage community and city staff one more time and record any emerging and urgent needs that may come up after phase one. And it will also allow us to engage our community again and plan for phase two. Next, please. Under the four main outcomes of the Women and Gender Strategy, we have 5 strategic priorities that underpin the strategy. Strategic priority number 1 is gender-based analysis and gender lens on city policies and strategies. And the goal of this strategic priority is to systematically use gender-based analysis to identify gender gaps and revise existing policies or create new policies towards equitable women and gender access. And the key strategic actions under this strategic priority include the implement, leverage equity to achieve diversity and inclusion targets, which is the Lead It program. The Lead It program is a strategic and comprehensive hiring process that aims to increase the representation of 4 equity employment groups, including women, in the city workforce. It works towards making city workforce reflective of the complex diversity of Ottawa's population that we serve. It tracks applicants from employment equity groups through all the stages of hiring and creates tools to identify the pain points and the barriers that face employment equity groups, including women. Under this strategic priority, we also will review city policies regarding council, support staff, and general policies related to sexual and gender-based harassment and violence. We will also incorporate language on gender analysis in the new official plan. There are strategic actions under this priority that will benefit women and girls in our community, including the Canada-Ontario Housing Benefit, which is a program to expand the number of affordable housing options to women fleeing domestic violence, single women, and lone female-led households. There will be a gender lens that will be integrated in the cost-benefit analysis of the capital operating costs for new family shelters. And also strategic actions that are related to incorporation of a gender lens in strategies and programs of service areas, such as the service system plan for children's services 2019 and 2023, as well as a gender lens in the development of the new parks and recreation facilities master plan. Next, please. The second strategic priority is women and gender sensitive data. And the goal to this strategic priority is to integrate a women and gender lens in the city's data systems and use gender sensitive data to make decisions and inform cities' strategies, plans, and programs. Under this strategic action, the strategic actions under this priority include establishing a sound quantitative, qualitative baseline of gender, race, equity considerations in city data. The gender, race, and equity baseline study will provide the city with a diagnostic analytical information on how gender and race equity are reflected in the current data systems. We are hoping from this study to get concrete recommendations, including best practices, and to integrate on how to integrate a gender and race lens in our data systems. And it will go further than demographic data to include as well recommendations on reporting on data and data analysis and engagement of equity deserving groups in the community. The strategic priority also includes the promotion of the Count Me In survey, which will help the city gain more and deep understanding of the city's representation across employment equity groups, including women. Other strategic actions under this include an integration of a gender lens into the data strategy of the community and social services, as well as an examining study into the demographic data from a gender lens for the Community and Social Services Department. Next, please. The third strategic priority is meaningful public engagement of intersectional groups of women and gender diverse persons. And the goal is to improve the level of meaningful engagement of community organizations, service providers, and other stakeholders and residents from all gender groups on gender needs and service gaps. And under this strategic priority, we will use a gender and equity lens to assess the diversity and participation of intersectional groups of women in public appointments to advisory committee, board, and agencies. Also, a gender lens will be used in the development and implementation of public consultations, such as the consultations around the Parks and Recreation Facilities Master Plan. Next, please. The fourth strategic priority is awareness raising and training on women and gender equity. And the goal is to increase awareness and capacity of City Council, management, and staff in integrating a women and gender lens in their work. The key strategic actions include provision of education to city staff to deepen their understanding on colonial impacts on Indigenous women, and also application of an Indigenous gender-based analysis to their policies programs, and also an update to the equity and inclusion lens to highlight gender aspects and conduct training to new employees. Next, please. The fifth strategic priority is gender-sensitive resource allocation. The goal is to develop processes in the city planning, programming, and budgeting that will contribute to women and gender equity. And under this strategic action, using a gender-based funding allocations to support women through COVID-19 pandemic. It also includes a period pack pilot project, which will meet women and girls' needs towards ending period poverty in priority neighborhoods. This action came in response to what we heard from the community about the needs in the early months of the pandemic. It follows up on some of the work that was coordinated between Women and Gender Equity and the Human Needs Task Force to coordinate delivery of free period packs to community organizations and shelters who were member of the Human Needs Task Force and who were serving women. Next, please. For the governance and implementation of the phase one of the strategy, Women and Gender Equity Council Sponsors Group will continue to champion women and gender equity work, as well as guide the process of implementation. Senior leadership team will oversee the implementation of phase one, and a women and gender equity team is going to be established from representatives of the service areas that contributed to phase one of the framework. A women and gender community table will be established so that we continue hearing from our community partners and allies and service providers on women issues, women needs, and gender gaps. The progress of phase one of the framework will be reported annually to council, sponsors group, and council, and a midterm strategic review after phase one will take place to ensure that this strategy continues to evolve and continues to respond to the needs of women and gender diverse persons in our community. Next, please. Some of the expected risks would be that due to changes to the scope of the pandemic, there may be a shift of resources to respond to critical needs probably this may impact the development of some of the tools or guidelines or implementation of some training and learning. To mitigate these risks, phase one of this strategy uses existing resources and embeds a gender lens, a women and gender lens in the existing work and the existing strategic plans of the city. And a COVID-19 gender and equity lens has been used to develop the framework. It will continue to be used in public engagement, communication, and outreach to make sure that the strategic framework continues to be relevant to the current needs. Next, please. The next steps is to establish the Women and Gender Equity Strategy Community Table and Women and Gender Equity City Team. The implementation of the phase 1 of the framework will be monitored and reported on the progress annually to SLT, the Council Sponsor Group, and the Council. And then again, a midterm review of progress will be planned for the first quarter of 2023 to look back at phase 1, reevaluate and integrate new and emerging needs. Next, please. Thank you very much. That's it for the presentation.
Thank you very much, team. So we'll begin with our delegations. Our first delegation today is Erin Lee. Erin Lee, please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. Sausan, thank you for all your work. Dear Community and Protective Services Committee, my name is Erin Lee from Activa, the Ottawa Coalition to End Violence Against Women. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of some of the members of the Women and Gender Equity Strategy Working Group. Firstly, the working group members recognize the relationship between Indigenous peoples on this land and the City of Ottawa on unceded Algonquin territory. We're pleased the city is engaged separately with the Ottawa Aboriginal Coalition to do work on Indigenous women's issues. We want to acknowledge the hard-won efforts of city staff responsible for developing the strategy. In particular, the community engagement underpinning the strategy was strong, and the strategy covers a wide range of internal processes. However, the engagement with our working group between initial consultation and strategy release has been limited due to COVID and internal departmental changes. This has resulted in a phase 1 strategy we support, but we want to see concrete changes for how phase 2 is created. The City of Ottawa, in partnership with local 2S LGBTQ+ organizations, conducted a needs assessment on improving communities' health and wellness. We applaud commitments in the strategy to enhance gender inclusion within city services, particularly more staff training, gender-neutral washrooms in city facilities, and trans-inclusive demographic data collection. However, the needs assessment recommendations pertain to the broader goals of strengthening community, health, and social services for 2S LGBTQ+ communities, and those recommendations are largely absent from the proposed strategy. We believe the strategy needs to go much further to meet its stated vision. We need your committee to make recommendations to council to ensure that phase 2 of the strategy is bold, resourced, and engages community in playing a leadership role with shared accountability. For phase 2, we need a process that is community co-created through collaboration and partnerships and externally accountable, whereby the community comes together through an accountability table, such as Le Conseil des Montréalaises or the Women's Advocacy Voice of Edmonton, so that we can meaningfully engage and have real influence on the strategy and framework. The community table should also have a designated accountability relationship with the council's sponsors group. It should be intentionally committed to meaningful intersectionality, allowing for the development of strategic actions that will positively benefit groups of women and gender diverse people, including newcomers, racialized people, people living on low income, people with disabilities, older adults, and other important groups. It should be integrated and cross-referenced with other city strategies to ensure they're streamlined and that the strategy is not siloed and ineffective. For instance, there should be multiple planners and staff with GBA plus expertise involved in the official plan, the 10-year housing and homelessness plan, community safety and well-being plan, and the older adult plan. It should be resourced financially and with human capacity. Phase 1 comes with no added funding. Departments are expected to achieve strategy objectives with existing funding. If we want comprehensive and transformative change, it needs to be resourced. And it should be mainstreamed and internally accountable so that a single staff person is not solely responsible for this work. Citywide transformation cannot be achieved on the shoulders of one person. We want women and gender leads in each department who are trained in the equity and inclusion lens and GBA+, and bring a strong intersectional analysis to the city's work. The pandemic has shown us that our city can't function without women and gender diverse people, especially those that are racialized or immigrants. There would be no carers, cashiers, cleaners, or healthcare workers, all essential for surviving the pandemic. These are the same people at greatest risk of contracting COVID and are targeted for violence. Just in the last 2 weeks, there have been transphobic messages posted in the city, and Mayor Watson was victim to a hate crime. We need to be bold and make a truly equal city for all. Let's make sure the strategy is transformational. In closing, we urge you to amend your motion to the following. Be it resolved that the Community and Protective Services Committee recommend Council approve the Women and Gender Equity Strategy and 2021-22 framework as outlined in this report and attached in document 2. Be it further resolved that for phase 2 of the framework, staff are directed to find resources to implement transformative change and in collaboration with community organizations, develop robust internal and external mechanisms. Accountability mechanisms. I thank you for your time, and I spoke on behalf of Activa, Calac Francophone d'Ottawa, COWI, the Coalition of Community Health and Resource Centers, Immigrant Women's Services Ottawa, Kind Space, Maison d'Amitié, Ottawa, that's us, Youth Services Bureau, and Wisdom to Action. Thank you so much.
Merci beaucoup, Erin. Thank you very much for your witness testimony today. I see Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you. I thought I saw Councillor Dean's hand up first, but thank you. Thank you very much, Erin, for coming out today, and also for your cooperation and work so far. I mean, you have been part of this. So, and this is phase 1, and I appreciate that you're already looking to phase 2. This is great, and I think that we do have to put but I think what I would like to do is refer what you put forward for staff, because it's not something we do on the back of an envelope. This is something we need a lot of thought in. You've mentioned some other cities, and I'd like some analysis of that so that we can move forward on your proposal, if you're comfortable with that, because I think we need to have some thought behind it of what those other cities are doing and how they're operating, because there's obviously excellent examples out there, and I think we can get there. So do you have any comments about any in particular about the other cities, of what they're doing that we can learn from?
Well, I think it makes sense to direct staff to do that if the outcome is to shift the relationship with the community. I think the working group level, here, I think what needs to happen for this plan to really be effective and to be more bold is that the city and the community, we need to work together more deeply, and we can help identify strategic actions that will have a greater impact versus staff telling us, what can you do in the box you're already in? Instead, it should be community and the city and city council saying, this is what's going to make the biggest difference in women and gender diverse people's lives. Now, how do we make it happen? So it's sort of turning it upside down. So I appreciate the idea of sending it back to staff for consideration. If there's a way that there can be a commitment to a relationship that underscores the importance of that visionary piece, that community are collaborators in that way, rather than at a working group level, which kind of stunts our engagement.
I think we have good examples at the city. I think the work that has been happening with the Human Needs Task Force is an excellent example of our partnership with community groups and getting out of silos. I think it's something that it took a pandemic for us to, having to work with everybody. It's funny how when there's an emergency, great things happen sometimes. I think that's kind of a good kind of formula to work with, what's going on out there. We have community partners like yourselves and others, and there's a lot of diversity. It's a big topic, and of course we're talking about diversity in all senses, because it's very intersectional. So yeah, complicated, and I think we have lots to learn. So I would recommend that staff come back with that. This conversation is not over. We're just starting. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kavanagh. Vice Chair Eglai.
Thank you. Two things, I guess. Is it possible, through you, Mr. Chair, that what Erin's proposed could be shared on a screen at some point, so we could all see it, and those watching from their homes or businesses could also see what the issue is, or what the question, I guess, not really an issue, but what the question or request is from Erin. I'm wondering if that could be facilitated.
Yes, please. Mr. Clerk, is it possible to put that up?
If we could get something from Erin, then as far as what exactly she was looking for, and send it to me.
It's at the bottom of the deputation. Do you want me to send you an email just with that text? Would that be helpful?
That would be good.
Okay, I'll do that now.
And I guess, Mr. Chair, my next question was more directed towards staff, so I can hold on to it if you want, but it's directly related to what Erin's put on the table.
Please hang on to it just until.
Okay, I will hang on to it then. Thank you, Erin. Thank you for the suggestion, and I will have a question for staff arising out of it when I have my opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Councillor Deans, I did see that you had your hand up earlier. Just want to make sure that you have an opportunity to speak if you'd like to ask some questions.
My questions are for staff, so I lowered my hand. They weren't for Erin, so when we get to that staff, then I'll go back on the list.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Our second delegate, and thank you very much, Erin, we appreciate it. I'm sure there'll be further discussion on this point in a moment. Our second delegation is Marie-Josée Houle, who is no stranger to this committee. Very nice to have you back again. Please go ahead.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to start by congratulating everyone involved with the creation of this strategy. Councillor Kavanagh, thank you for taking the lead on this initiative on behalf of City Council. And really, honestly, I can't begin to express how important the strategy is. So thank you for allowing me to speak today. The first part of the strategy is related to housing, which I was thrilled to see. Reading the report, it had me thinking about my diverse professional experience over the past 17 years in the affordable housing and homelessness sector, and what the system might look like if the gender equity lens is applied. So housing is not just a roof over people's heads. It needs to be an appropriate home in terms of safety, size, geography, the built form, location, proximity to community supports, amenities, and so on. And it looks different for everyone. So for women experiencing poverty, racialized women, women fleeing domestic violence, older women, gender diverse persons, and an appropriate home has so many more criteria to fill than just affordability and the number of bedrooms. And listening to Erin's deputation this morning, I really have to say that I echo her sentiments and recommendations. What I would like to see is how the community, as a collaborator, if I can borrow her words, is used when considering the implementation, the impact on the equity lens on housing and homelessness, especially with regards to the 10-year housing and homelessness plan and the official plan. But to be honest, I had a few stories to share with you. I don't know that they're necessary, but in the end, I really wanted to show up today and tell you this is great. This is a really great start. I'm really happy to see it. I don't know if anyone shows up to tell you thank you, but I'm here to show up to tell you thank you. So that's it for me, and I want to wish everyone a wonderful weekend.
Merci beaucoup, Marie-Josée. I see we have Councillor Kavanagh with a question. Please go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Marie-Josée. We've met a few times, and I think you have to take some credit yourself, because it's the advocates out there that inspire us. And I just wanted to pass that on, because you're on the ground, you're out there, and you're seeing what's needed. And as Erin said, that's why we need you. We need that partnership. So this is a two-way street. This is about seeing what's happening out there, because we can't always be there. We know that you're out there. Phase one is also about changing things internally, but it's also about the services we bring to the city, and we're looking forward to continue to work with you. So I appreciate you coming out today and just reminding us of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Any further questions for this delegation? Seeing none, we'll move on to questions to staff. I'd like to provide Councillor Kavanagh her 5 minutes at the beginning as our incredible council liaison. So please go ahead, Councillor Kavanagh.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Thank you very, very much. I just want to start by saying that we would not be here today if it were not for Councillors Dean and Councillors McKenney and all the work that they did to bring this idea forward, more than an idea, this concept. Frankly, that was very important. They saw it, and they saw the need and worked hard to make sure that it was brought forward. So my profound thank you to my colleagues for that. It's definitely was worth it. I'm very proud that we're celebrating this milestone. Phase one of our city's first women and gender equity strategy. Well, you've heard how much work has been put into it already. It's just amazing, and I have to give a shout out to Saucon. She is a one-woman band. We've got more of a team now, but she started out in the last year. She's been working almost exclusively on her own. Every time I'm asking questions about gender equity, she's the one behind the scenes doing all the research and doing a fabulous job. And I want to give a profound thank you for all the hard work she's done. Erin was sort of saying you can't have one person just doing the whole thing, but Saucon kind of did for a bit, and we need to give her more resources, of course, and help, but she's done a phenomenal job. So I wanted to make sure. So we've got a plan, and we're working on it. And let's be clear, this is about change, and this is about moving forward. So that's what we're doing. Si nous suivons cette feuille de route, la ville d'Ottawa sera un endroit plus sécuritaire et plus protectif où travailler. Plus important encore, il enverra un message au lieu de travail de l'ensemble de la ville pour leur dire que nous voulons une équité des genres complète dans notre communauté et nous sommes prêts à nous mobiliser et être un exemple. People here are working, and we're working with our community partners and residents across the city who've told us their priorities. We've heard it loud and clear. Housing, safety, full inclusion, diversity are all important, very big goals. And we have to come through. We have to look at the way we work with each other, the way we hire, the way we treat our staff, the way we spend taxpayers' money, the issues that we give our attention to. I'm hopeful about this strategy because it's not just some nice little report that's going to sit there on its own. It's been crafted deliberately to align with almost all the important plans that we're making for the future of our city. It's grounded in the same values and language as our new official plan, our community safety and well-being plan, our corporate strategic plan, our reconciliation action plan, our anti-racism strategy. A gender analysis will inform all important decisions from here on in. This strategy is integrated, it's actionable, and it's measurable. That's what we're about. Mais soyons clairs, ce n'est pas une feuille de route. Elle les jette dans la base de travail à venir. Les tâches difficiles sont encore devant nous et nous serons confrontés à des obstacles personnels systématiques et financiers très réels en cours de route. Phase 2 has to be about action, and that will actually go beyond good policy and to impact our lives, our women's lives. As Councillor Women and Gender Equity Liaison and chair of the sponsorship group, this strategy is a priority for me. I have given it a lot of attention and I will continue to do that. I am pleased to work with extremely skilled staff such as Sausan, Suzanne, Donna, Jeffy, and their teams. And I have been encouraged by the way my colleagues here in council have all supported this work. I want to thank them all because they have been very supportive. I am learning all the time about the women's lives across the community in our community stakeholder groups. And it's been an honor to have residents of Ottawa reach out to tell me their stories that are grounded in reality. Par exemple, la fin de semaine passée, j'ai discuté les sujets avec lesquels des fois des femmes et familles, comme comment la ville va accélérer l'équité et l'inclusion de communautés noires et particulièrement des femmes noires francophones en ce qui concerne les emplois dans la ville. Nous devons répondre à toutes les questions de notre communauté diversée. Nous sommes sur la voie. J'ai hâte de vous faire part des réussites et des défis à mesure que nous allons de l'avant. I was very proud to meet with Carrefour, which was a group that is in my community of Francophone women, Black women, primarily from the Congolese, and hear of their concerns. These are things that we have to listen to. So this is part of the diversity out there that needs to be brought in. But I just want to finish by saying that we're on our way. And I look forward to sharing the successes and challenges with all of you as we move forward. Lots of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. It seems as though the clerk has this direction prepared. I think that it would be helpful for us as we move forward with questions to staff to have that direction placed upon the screen. Councillor Kavanagh, are you prepared to be the mover of this direction?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. In discussions with staff, it seems they're prepared to take this direction. So let's place it up on the screen just so it can be a portion of the discussion. Our next committee member is Vice Chair Eglai. Please go ahead.
You took away most of my questions because I wanted to know how staff felt about the direction and whether, whether they could take it on. And so it seems they can. So thank you to staff, and I'll just spend a couple of minutes again thanking staff on a broader base. The piece of work that you've put together for us here today, I think is very comprehensive, very substantive, and shows a lot of collaborative and cooperative work, both with council colleagues who are on sponsors group, as well as community stakeholders. So I think the work you've done here is very important, very well done. And I'm 100% supportive of the work that you've done. And again, as is fitting, Councillor Kavanagh will move the direction. But if she wasn't prepared to or able to, I was more than happy to do that, because I think that's good feedback that Aaron brought to the committee. And I'm very pleased that staff felt that it was something that they could take on and move forward with as well. So just a big thank you to everybody, both all my council mates who are involved in this and senior staff, and again, very importantly, our stakeholders in the community. So thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. Councillor Deans, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I wanted to start by congratulating all those involved in getting us to this point today. I think this is a milestone that is definitely worth recognizing. And I want to especially congratulate my colleague, Councillor Kavanagh, for her leadership and on this file. It's very important to me, and I think it's very important to us as a city to be engaged in this work. And I wanted to thank the city staff who I know have worked diligently on this file, as well as our community collaborators for all of their hard work in bringing us to where we are. Back in, I think it was 2018, when Councillor McKinney and I went to Montreal and met with women in Montreal about their gender and equity strategy, I think we were both left kind of shocked at how far behind the city of Ottawa was, and how much work really needed to happen. And we came back to Ottawa determined to drive this through council, which we did. And so I think it's, you know, a proud moment for us as well that we're starting to see the fruits of the labor. I mean, for me, this is the tip of the iceberg. There is a lot more work that needs to be done in a lot of aspects of life to get us where I sort of ultimately imagine we as a city need to be in terms of being leaders in this field. But that doesn't take away from how much work has gone into where we are, and I'm grateful and respectful of the work that has been done by so many to bring us where we are today. I just have a couple of questions. I guess they're sort of more future looking, but one arises out of my work over at police and the work that we've been doing internally on sexual violence and harassment strategy. And I just wonder, where are we as a city in terms of having sexual violence and harassment strategy? And in particular, do we have third-party intake and a safe place for women and gender diverse groups to report harassment in the workplace if they're experiencing that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor. In general, we have a policy in the city that is robust and being revised right now. Moving forward, there are strategic activities in the framework that speak to safety, a revision of sexual harassment policies. We also are committed to increasing awareness and training of staff around that. There are several strategic actions that are contributed to the framework by City Clerk's Office that are related to mandatory and enhanced training around sexual harassment. I can refer to Valerie Turner, the General Manager from Innovative Client Services, to augment in your specific questions, Councillor.
Yes, thank you. So I can assure the councillor that the city has a robust and recently revised policy on workplace violence and harassment of all types. The original workplace violence and harassment policy was approved in January 23 rather, and following updates in 2013 and 2018, the most recent update was released January 1st, 2021. We will build on the work that is already ongoing to protect people from violence and harassment. Safety is one of the four main outcomes of the strategy to be addressed in a variety of ways, such as hiring and recruitment toolkits, mandatory messaging provided by the city clerk, mandatory training sessions on inclusivity and respect with a focus on violence and harassment, a campaign to raise awareness of gender-based violence, and revision of the city's policies around respectful workplace conduct.
And in terms of intake and reporting, is there a safe place for women or gender diverse groups to report if they feel that they're being subjected to sexual violence or harassment in the workplace?
Yes, there is an intake process through Human Resources.
Okay, and is that well known to city staff?
My understanding is yes, we do run periodic campaigns, but I can certainly report back to you if you'd like to have a deeper understanding of the frequency and the nature of those campaigns.
I'd like to have a deeper understanding of how the system is working in that regard, because I think just because of my experience over at police, I think it's important that people feel free to come forward and safe to do so, and that they can do so without impacting their long-term job prospects. I also wanted to ask, I really appreciate the work that is in stage one. I'm kind of looking beyond stage one to stage 2, 3, 4, however many stages it takes. And I'm thinking a little bit about the areas of the city that women and gender diverse groups are grossly underrepresented in the workforce. And I'm wondering what kind of tools we have currently in place to increase employment of underrepresented groups.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor, the strategic framework in phase 1 includes specific tools that will allow us not only to measure the level of representation of equity employment groups, including women, but also the intersectional groups of women. So racialized women, women with disability, and Indigenous women, but also allow us to purposefully boost the process and the representation level. The Lead It program is a hiring strategic process that will roll out. We have piloted it in 2 departments, and the way it works is it looks at the hiring process from the beginning of application, moving throughout the short listing into the interview process. It involves training, it involves tracking of representation of women. We expect that this process, when rolled out, as indicated in the framework by 2022, it will definitely lead to a change in the representation. In parallel to and in collaboration to this, we are promoting the Count Me In survey, which is we're promoting self-identification of city staff, because in order to respond to the needs and to have a better picture of representation, we want to have accurate data on equity representation of city staff. Now, both these tools are combined with actions such as training and awareness raising in the city, and the gender accord that the city has just signed is an agreement that has specific assessment indicators and tools that we as a signatory in the city are asked to report on, which will also serve as an additional tool for us to assess what can be done and where are the gaps and in which sectors.
Yeah, and I completely agree that gathering this data and tracking it and being able to measure it is all important in moving us in the right direction. I guess stage 1, when I read this strategy, just looks it looks like we're starting in the areas that we're most comfortable in, like community and social services and those areas. But I just wonder for things like the fire department or the transit service, how do we have tools there that are ensuring that those workforces become more gender diverse?
So yes, the contributing service areas to the whole framework are housing, children's services that are under the community and social services. But we also have activities and strategic actions that have been contributed by other departments, like the recreation, like planning, and the city clerks. In terms of representation, the tool of Lead It has been piloted in 2 departments. There is a plan to roll it out across the city, which means that other departments that you have mentioned will be included. There is also an aspect under the gender accord, as well as the Lead It program, to look beyond the numbers of women, but also look into the representation in the qualitative aspects of representation, such as prosperity and choice, and underrepresentation of women in specific areas, like the areas that you've mentioned, Councillor.
Just have about 20 seconds off, Councillor. Please go ahead.
So just to follow up on that quickly. So in areas like I mentioned, when would we start seeing changes in terms of hiring policies and practices in those departments?
So Sasa, maybe I can take this. So part of the framework identifies for each of the individual service areas and departments what is the market representation for particular professions across all service areas. So all of us as leaders of each of our individual departments are looking at strategies to increase representation in those areas or professions where they're underrepresented. And part of the Lead It program, I think what's exciting about that is it takes the full process into consideration. So it would have specific recruitment outreach targeted efforts for particular groups to be taking a look at how do we increase that representation across the city. So it would be targeting things like those particular jobs that you're speaking to or departments and services you're speaking to.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just before moving on to Councillor Fleury, I would also, because staff have now had an opportunity to look at this direction in depth, so just to ensure that I'm not misrepresenting anything, I'd like to give the opportunity to Donna Gray to follow up on what was said earlier by Vice Chair Aguilera. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we would be really pleased to take the direction and to work with the working group and the committee as we move forward in defining phase 2 and the actions and activities in phase 2. And we will identify the resources required around that phase 2 and bring that back to committee and council for their consideration.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fleury.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Moi aussi, j'aimerais premièrement soulever l'éloge de l'ensemble des partenaires, là, notre collègue Teresa, Sassan et puis Jeff T et puis Suzanne, vraiment un travail incroyable à la ville, puis une collaboration incroyable aussi avec les partenaires. Donc, comme élu masculin blanc, donc je suis en situation de privilège, on doit être des alliés, non seulement dans la création d'une stratégie, mais aussi dans son implantation. Donc, c'est important pour nous de permettre non seulement d'avancer les enjeux d'équité, mais aussi de soulever les enjeux qui nous limitent d'atteindre les objectifs. Donc, je nous félicite d'avoir une stratégie. Je crois que la stratégie est une étape importante pour la ville, pour l'organisation de la ville. On est un employeur important dans notre région avec plus près de 17 000 employés. Donc, on a une responsabilité importante. Puis, en ayant les meilleures pratiques, on reflète aussi à travers les agences qui nous reflètent dans notre communauté. Donc, j'aimerais débuter par souligner ces éléments-là. Je vais mettre quelques bémols. Puis les bémols sont certaines des difficultés que l'on a eues comme organisation ces dernières années pour que l'on ne réplique pas les mêmes erreurs. Moi, je travaille de façon rapprochée, puis il y a d'autres élus, comme le président aussi, qui travaillent avec la direction des services en français. La direction des services en français, un des gros enjeux qu'ils ont, c'est qu'ils sont un petit groupe, puis tout le monde va à ce petit groupe-là. On doit rayonner à travers l'organisation de façon horizontale. On l'a observé aussi pour les enjeux environnementaux. Le conseil municipal avait des objectifs pour être pour amener les enjeux environnementaux comme stratégie. Puis tout le monde dans les différents groupes reflétait un petit groupe au niveau des stratégies de l'environnement, quand chaque groupe, travaux publics, l'eau, parcs et loisirs, c'est une situation horizontale. Moi, j'observe que l'organisation a des difficultés parfois à, oui, avoir un leader qui s'assure que la vision est là, mais ensuite de ça, le faire refléter dans chacun des départements. Donc, c'est plutôt une reconnaissance à ce moment-ci pour qu'on mette en place les stratégies pour que la stratégie que l'on a devant nous soit bel et bien implantée à son plein objectif. Donc, je vous félicite encore une fois, puis j'espère qu'on va obtenir ce reflet-là au niveau horizontal dans l'organisation pour l'élaboration, pour l'implantation de cette stratégie. Donc, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Alors, ça fait beaucoup de sens, conseiller. Merci beaucoup pour ta réflexion. Alors, maintenant, on a un autre membre de conseil qui veut demander des questions à notre équipe. Alors, je passe la parole maintenant au Councillor Ralston King.
Thank you, Chair. It's a real pleasure to see the fruition of the strategy come to reality at Council. So I'm really pleased, and it's an honor to really be at this session and to acknowledge both Councillor Dean's and Councillor McKinney's vision coming to reality, and its guidance through Councillor Kavanagh as Council liaison. I just had a quick question kind of about coordination of the strategy. Obviously, we also have the establishment of the Anti-Racism Secretariat, and many of the items that have been identified in this report do cross-pollinate with some of the issues that were expressed through action planning sessions around the Anti-Racism Secretariat, such as housing, such as employment. So I was just wondering if we could get some more detail from staff on how both areas will be working together to really pursue greater quality of life for the residents of Ottawa through these dual mandates. I know that they have been combined in the creation of a new section, but I was wondering if staff could elaborate as to how these processes are going to be coordinated.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor King. In the city, we recognize that gender and race, they go hand in hand. The intersectionality lens that we have established through the strategy as a way forward for the city acknowledges that the experiences of all women are not the same. And definitely the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted that racialized women have been disproportionately impacted. So through the actions that we propose in the framework, there is a close relation and collaboration between the Anti-Racism Secretariat and the Women and Gender and Equity Strategy. Examples on that is the Gender, Race and Equity Baseline Survey Study, which is a joint study that looks at how the city deals with its data systems, how it reports on it, and how we engage our communities and hear their voices from both a gender and race perspectives. The feedback that we provide on corporate plans, such as the official plan, integrates both a gender lens, but with an intersectionality approach, so that the needs of racialized women and also racialized communities and girls are reflected. The activities that we implement around learning and awareness raising also almost always incorporate both gender and race dimensions.
And just if I could add to that, Mr. Chair, as well. So these actions are all priorities in the city strategic plan. And so what we are doing now as these strategies are in development, we're coordinating those through this equity secretariat to then take the actions and have regular reporting to our senior leadership team as part of the priorities of council, to make sure that we have that direct accountability and lens on all of the actions and are moving forward to make sure that they're achieved. And I think it also addresses Councillor Fleury's concern around, how do you do that horizontal accountability? And what I think, and you can see today with each of the general managers who are participating in this discussion, is we all have joint accountability for the actions of the strategy. And this group is just an enabler to support the reporting for the accountability ultimately to the city manager, to you then as council, on the progress against your city strategic plan.
Well, I thank staff for that, and I think that the strategy that's before us today really does confirm our collective commitment to advancing equity and inclusion, so that everyone, regardless of their gender, age, abilities, religion, race, or income, can really take part in all aspects of life in Ottawa. And I think that we're trying to achieve that, obviously, through women and gender equity, and also through ensuring that we address racial equity. So I really also finally really want to commend staff for the tremendous work that they've undertaken in terms of consultation. I think I'm seeing this process also unfold around the Anti-Racism Secretariat and have been impressed with the consultation process there. So I know that the consultation process was comprehensive, intersessional, and a great approach towards public engagement for women and gender equity. And this is a wonderful, I think, milestone in this process, and also I think a wonderful preview of what we might see as well with the Anti-Racism Secretariat and the creation of an anti-racism strategy. So I really, once again, want to thank staff for the tremendous amount of work that they've undertaken. Thank you, Chair.
Alors, à ce moment, juste veux dire que je suis tellement impressionné par le travail acharné de cette équipe, le travail acharné de notre liaison, conseillère Kavanagh, et toute la groupe qui a travaillé sur cette stratégie. On sait qu'il y a beaucoup d'autres travail à faire dans la phase numéro 2. Mais aujourd'hui, je suis tellement impressionné, un, par la stratégie, et deux, par la qualité de française de conseiller Kavanagh. You've done some incredible work on your French, Councillor, and it was wonderful to hear you speak la langue Molière aujourd'hui. I think that was particularly awesome, and you know, just there was an incredible amount of work put into this by staff and by yourself, and very, very pleased with the work of the sponsors group and all of the councillors that sat on it. I think that it's quite thoughtful. I do realize that we have quite a bit more work to do when it comes to phase 2, and we want to make sure that we keep our noses to the grindstone and make sure that we make this strategy a reality and make a real difference in the lives of women and gender diverse people in this city. So at this time, I'll ask the clerk to please just put the direction back up on the screen. I think that it would be appropriate for us at this time to pass the direction before passing the report. A momentous occasion for Councillor Kavanagh as our liaison for this committee and the sponsors group. So we'll with the will of committee, is this direction carried? Carried.
Carried.
And on the report as a whole, is it carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Wonderful. Well, it's a pretty darn good way to start a Friday, I would say. On a rainy Friday, we've got some sunshine here today, which is always wonderful. We have no in-camera items today. We have no notices. Oh, do we have any notices of motion to be considered at a future meeting?
None received by me.
Okay. Any from the committee? No. Okay. We have none to date. Any inquiries?
None.
None. Oh.
I'm sorry, Chair. It's Carol Ann.
Yeah.
I don't have anything written out, but I would like to know if we have a policy that puts up direction markers or location markers on most of our walking trails.
Okay. Do we have Dan Cheney with us, or would you be able to take that inquiry back and bring it to committee at the next meeting?
I asked because I had someone break their leg on a trail, and it took paramedics like 45 minutes to locate them and get them out.
Oh,
so
my goodness.
Okay.
Sure, Chair. Happy to take that away and report back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Meehan. Do we have any other business? Okay, seeing none. On adjournment, is the motion carried?
Carried.
Carried. We are adjourned. So thank you, everyone. This has been a wonderful day and a great meeting with very thoughtful questions and thoughtful interventions from everyone here. Truly, truly appreciate it, and all the hard work again from staff, the sponsors group, and of course our council liaison. The next meeting of Community and Protective Services Committee is scheduled for Thursday, April 15th, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all then. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thanks, Chair.